Alright, in this video we're going to look at fixing the house grounding. If you've been following this series, in the first video I made a power supply, benchtop power supply using off-the-shelf parts. And the last couple of videos we've been looking at the performance of the DPS 3005 power supply. And in the last video I decided that my house ground was not present. The outlet wasn't grounded, and it got even worse, but we'll take a look at that and see what the results were. While I was trying to figure out how to run a ground wire, I did trip across my house inspection report from when I bought the house more than 10 years ago, and one of the things I noticed in the inspection report was that the jumper around the power meter wasn't connected, and I thought, I must have done that by now. Went down and looked in the basement, and gosh, it wasn't connected, so I did clean that up and got that connected. So the two sides of the water meter are now connected, and you'd think, well, they're metal on both sides. Yeah, but there's rubber gaskets and things like that in there that keep it from making a connection, and I checked with an ohmmeter. It wasn't present until I got that jumper in there. I'm not sure which metals are which. I think the jumper is copper. I sanded that down quite a bit. The clamp looks like steel to me. The pipe, I can't tell for sure if it's steel or copper, but it had a ton of that sort of white powdery stuff around it, and it wasn't making any contact there. Even if it had been jumpered, it wouldn't have made contact. So I took it out, the clamp off, and brushed it all down with a brass brush, and then in the end checked again with a ohmmeter, and it was a nice clean connection. The other side shows all that white powder on it. That comes when you get dissimilar metals making contact with each other, and that's pretty normal. It makes me question the whole scheme of doing this at all, because it'll just become cruddy later on. It'd be better to have all the materials be the same type of material. I suppose it's a brass screw probably, and probably a steel bracket, and that pipe looks like it's steel there, maybe, so maybe that's not the core of the problem. Hard to tell. I really can't tell for sure here. From the color, it looks like copper on the left and steel on the right, and maybe a bronze material on the water meter itself. Anyway, it's making good contact at the moment, and I might go look for a better, less dissimilar set of metal brackets or something. I don't know. Any suggestions would be appreciated. I'm not an electrician, just doing what I can figure out as an electronic engineer. I think more modern installations require ground rods. I don't know, two of them staked in outside the house. I think they have to be 8-foot ground rods, I believe, and I believe they have to be 6 feet apart. Can't remember that for sure, but this house is an old house, and they did ground through the water pipe system when it was in. Don't know if you can't make new construction that way, but I believe it's okay to leave it that way. Again, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. In the prior video, I determined that the neutral to earth ground had a pretty high potential of 41 volts, and that's just not right. It should be a volt or less sort of a number, and that's something that the goal of this was to fix, and I did achieve that after quite a bit of work, but that was the problem, or a problem. Watched a few YouTube videos, and there was a guy that said you can legally to code run a separate ground wire from the outlet box as long as it goes to any box that has a ground on the same panel. And I have a panel and a sub panel, but this particular one is on the upper panel, the main panel, so I figured I would go look and see if I have any grounds that are already present on any outlets. And this outlet in the basement does have a ground on it, and I verified that. Here, we'll take a look. To verify it, I bought another one of these little testers. I'm sure that means I'll find the other one in the next day or so that I have. Hopefully I'll put them somewhere I can remember where they are. But if you see the two orange lights on, the center and the right orange light, in this particular instance, it means that the outlet is wired correctly and there is a ground that's present. And that was good to see, because I knew if I could get a green wire to here, I'd be in good shape. Still a bit of a mystery to me as to how that outlet is grounded, because the only two wires that go into that box are from the knob and tube wiring. well, one of these two wires, I forget which, coming in. So there's somewhere in the circuit that it's grounded through a good earth ground, and really don't quite understand where. There's a lot of tracing to do. My house basically has this, I assume they put in this bus bar essentially of knob and two wire in the wiring when the house got electrified, whenever that was. And everything just about my house is connected to this. I realized when I shut it off and I was walking around and just about everything was off, how many of the things in the house are connected to that. All sorts of lights in the house. My router, which is in a completely opposite end of the same floor. Lights on the second floor. Everything seems to be connected to this. This is just part of a bigger electrical renovation that my house obviously needs, and the inspection report called it all out very clearly and said, hey, there's lots of issues, and if you buy the house, it should make it a priority. Well, 10 years later, it's obviously not a priority, but I'll fix this stuff as I go along. This is the one that I'm fixing at the moment. This is the outlet that I'm going to fix or fixed, and you can see the green wire I attached for ground, and if you look carefully, you can see a problem. One of the problems is that on the left side, the long side, the neutral side, is connected a black wire. Well, my inspection report also said that in the box there were wires that were connected to the wrong color wires connected, which I don't think I've fixed yet. But I said I'll just wait and see if that one's hot or not when I'm done with getting the ground wire attached, and we'll see what happens in a minute, or maybe a couple of minutes. Well, this is probably a good point to throw in the standard disclaimer. Anything I'm going to do is potentially dangerous, and I would say don't listen to me, don't do anything that I do or what I did. In fact, I got shocked twice doing this. I thought it was clear of the one wire, but when you got a black wire in a dark basement with a flashlight in your mouth trying to see something and you're reaching to grab something, you can get shocked. And then another time you think, oh, that wire's fine. No, there's potential between wires even when they're disconnected. So don't do anything I do, and if you have any issues with any of this sort of stuff, call an electrician. Standard disclaimer. Now, my house isn't that big, but it's so easy to get flipped around between stories, because when you go up and down stairs and you take turns and you're going here and there, it's tough to figure out where you are. So what I did is drew up a floor plan of all three floors and marked reference points that I knew. Like, I know where the backyard is from each of the three floors, and was somewhat surprised about where things actually lined up between the three floors. But in doing that, you can then add dimensions to outlets and then go measure in the corresponding floor below it. In doing that, I found where that power cable is coming from and snaked a green wire through that same hole down there. Had to punch a hole in the walls you saw in the previous picture to find the wire next to it, but found the wire and wired up the outlet. This is where that green wire is coming down in the basement, and I twisted it around the Romex cable that I have there. Romex is the wrong word. It's old fiber, whatever it is, kind of pairs at least. It's not individual cables. So some of the house has newer, slightly newer construction in it. Anything I did's got this yellow jacketed Romex 3-conductor 12 gauge with a unshielded ground or uninsulated ground in the middle. But that's where the ground cable came. I figured that small plastic box is probably too small for the outlet and the wires that have to go into here. So I bought a larger box, and it'll have just a single duplex outlet on the front of it when it gets installed. And hopefully I'll be able to shove all this wire in there. I always find it a huge challenge to get wire down into a box. It's just incredibly difficult for some reason. I don't quite know why, but it is. Here's the outlet installed on that box and all of the wire nuts installed. And I'm using the power pins on the outlet for some of the dropping between the two, but I have a lot of wires going in here. And I've grounded the case of the box too, so there's a screw at the bottom of the box, or the top of the box in this instance. And it turned out pretty good, I think. I mean, I haven't pushed all the wires in there yet, and I have to kill the power to do that, and sit in the basement with the flashlight in my mouth and go hope for the best, but we'll see. I did check that outlet just to make sure that I didn't break it, and it's got the two correct orange lights on center and right, so I didn't break anything inside of it. And when I came back up and checked the outlet upstairs, I found out that, yeah, that black wire was on the wrong side. Shut the power off, disconnected the wire, checked it with a non-contact meter because there's another drop off that. And yeah, by gosh, that black wire is the hot wire, so I flipped the sides around. And now, 2 days later, I have a good power jack going to my space where my test equipment is. Now, will that let us test, and will the grounding issues that I had over here at the power supply all be gone? Well, they should be. I checked the outlet strip that's next to it that I'm plugged into, and I did see the same 2 lights lit. So I know that that outlet's good, but will the power supply be good? All right, let's take a look and see if grounding all of the metal on this box solved the problem we looked at in the last video with noise. Right now the box is off. Let's turn on the box. And we see noise coming up, just like we saw before. The output is off. It's set for 5 volts, and it's running into a 5 ohm load, the same 5 ohm load as before. And if we turn the output on, what do we get? We get the same noise. Now, interestingly, when I grab and hold on to the load or the box I touch, I don't get the noise going away like I did before. So that's an interesting result. But all of the surfaces are well grounded together. I've left the 0.1 microfarad cap on here just because that was the last set of points I took. Let's zoom in and take a look and see what it looks like. See if it looks any different. Let's see. Looks surprisingly exactly the same. At least a half a volt, always a quarter of a volt. Let's move the trigger level up again. Get some of the higher runners. There's definitely some stuff above 400 millivolts. 500 millivolts, and then it goes flat at 600. Oh, there's one. It might be a tiny bit less, but it really isn't much less. And go back down, and still quite a bit of noise. So grounding all of the metal on the box didn't solve the problem. They're all connected up to frame ground, and they're all wired together to frame ground. If you want more information, you can see our wiki pages for these products, and we have YouTube videos on them as well. We have a store in Tindy where we sell all of our cards. Thanks for watching our video, and if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.